That's right, pack
Teacher.
You think you can just walk in here and make demands? You will do as you're told.
That baby ain't mine. The words slammed through the hospital room like a gunshot. Nurses froze. The young woman lying weakly in the bed clutched her newborn closer, her arms trembling from exhaustion and fear. She had spent 12 long hours fighting to bring this life into the world, and instead of comfort, she was handed cruelty. Standing tall in his tailored suit, Jacob Whitmore, billionaire real estate mogul, looked down at her with stormy gray eyes that made boardrooms shiver. But here they carried nothing but disdain. His voice was cold, sharp, designed to cut. "Don't you dare try to trap me with a child that isn't mine." The woman, Monica Carter, once his maid, couldn't find her breath. She had worked for him in his glass tower penthouse, dusting marble floors and cleaning crystal chandeliers, never once believing she'd end up entangled in his life like this. Yet here she was, broken, humiliated, holding a baby that carried features she could already see. A pale tint to his skin, eyes that, though closed, promised a gray hue she knew too well. The room grew unbearably silent. A nurse shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "Sir, please, this is a hospital." But Jacob didn't budge. He stepped closer, towering over Monica's fragile frame. "You think because you worked under my roof, you have a claim on my fortune?" His words dripped with venom. "You're nothing but an opportunist. My lawyers will deal with you." Tears blurred Monica's vision, but she held her baby tighter. "Jacob, you know this child is yours. Look at him." "I said enough." His voice thundered, making the baby whimper. "You'll never see a cent from me. Take your lies back to the Bronx where you belong." The words cut deeper than any blade. To him, she was nothing more than a servant daring to cross the line between their worlds. The marble penthouse, the chauffeured cars, the champagne parties, those belonged to him. She belonged to dust and bleach and worn-out shoes. As Jacob turned and stormed out, cameras clicked. Paparazzi had followed him even here, sensing a scandal, and they caught every frame. The powerful billionaire storming away from a tearful mother clutching her newborn. For Monica, it wasn't just rejection, it was public humiliation. The photos would be tomorrow's headlines, and she would be painted as the liar, the gold digger, the maid who tried to snare a billionaire. But as Jacob's car sped away into the night, one nurse leaned over Monica's bed, whispering softly, "Sweetheart, and don't cry. Sometimes the truth has a way of coming out." Monica kissed the baby's forehead, whispering through her tears, "He'll see. One day, he'll see." And with that, the seeds of a storm were planted, one that would grow to shake Jacob Whitmore's empire to its core. Before the scandal, before the tears in the hospital, Monica Carter was just another struggling woman in the Bronx. She worked double shifts at a laundromat, her hands cracked from detergent, her rent always behind. She dreamed of more, but dreams didn't pay bills. Her chance came one spring morning when she answered a cleaning agency's ad. Live-in maid needed, Manhattan, good pay. The address made her pause. Park Avenue, a world she'd only seen in magazines. Walking into Jacob Whitmore's penthouse was like stepping into another universe. Marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a throne, chandeliers brighter than daylight itself. She felt small, invisible, the way people from her neighborhood always felt when stepping into wealth. Jacob didn't notice her at first. To him, she was just another uniform passing through. But she noticed him. Tall, with sharp features and those storm-gray eyes that seemed to pierce through glass. He carried himself like a man who owned not just the room, but the entire city. And he did. Monica kept her head down. She polished silver, folded linens, and kept to the shadows. But she couldn't help but notice the women who floated through his world. Models, heiresses, actresses, always laughing, always sipping champagne, always disposable. At night, when the parties ended and the guests vanished, she would find the remnants. Lipstick on glasses, perfume clinging to the hallways, the faint echoes of laughter that never included her. But then came the night everything shifted. Jacob returned home early from a failed business deal, the storm in his eyes darker than usual. He found Monica in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes. For the first time, he really looked at her, not as a maid, but as a woman. It started with conversation, then late-night talks, then something far more dangerous. Monica never imagined it would lead to betrayal, to pregnancy, to humiliation. But the night his gaze softened, the line between Billionaire and Maid blurred, and from that blurred line came a secret neither of them could bury forever. The mansion was always buzzing with movement, chefs rushing in the kitchen, gardeners trimming hedges, security patrolling the gates. But for Jacob Whitford, all that background noise was just part of the empire he'd built. He barely noticed the people who kept it running except one, Monica Carter. It started small. A glance that lingered too long. A moment where their hands brushed while she served him coffee. The air between them began to thicken, as if the mansion itself was keeping a secret. Jacob would catch himself staring when Monica thought no one was watching. She wasn't like the women who usually circled his world, those with designer bags and fake smiles. Monica had a quiet strength. She moved with purpose, spoke with dignity, and never seemed intimidated by the golden halls of his home. One night, after returning late from a gala, Jacob found her alone in the grand piano room. She wasn't working. She was sitting there in silence, humming softly to herself. Her voice carried sadness and longing, the kind money couldn't buy. "Why aren't you in your quarters?" Jacob asked, his tone sharper than intended. Monica looked startled but didn't flinch. "I was finishing my shift. I guess I needed a moment to breathe." Jacob stood in the doorway watching her. He couldn't explain why, but something in him shifted. For the first time in years, he felt human again. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations grew longer. He learned she dreamed of becoming a nurse, but had given it up to care for her family. She learned that beneath his billions, Jacob carried scars from a father who had never once told him he was proud. It was dangerous, this growing closeness. Both of them knew it. Monica tried to keep her distance, but the more she pulled back, the more Jacob found reasons to. It happened faster than either of them expected. That stormy night, Jacob poured himself a glass of wine and found Monica still working. He offered her one, joking that she deserved better than washing dishes while thunder shook the walls. She hesitated, then accepted. One glass turned into two. The silence between them grew heavier, filled with words neither dared to speak. "You know this is wrong," Monica whispered finally, her hands trembling as she set the glass down. "I know," Jacob admitted, his voice low, "but I can't stop thinking about you." Her heart pounded. She wanted to walk away. She should have walked away. But when his hand brushed hers, the wall she'd built crumbled. What followed was passion neither of them planned. It was desperate, reckless, and hidden beneath the mansion's roof. A secret written in shadows. When the storm ended and the morning sun slipped through the curtains, reality hit. Monica pulled away, ashamed. "We can't do this, Jacob. I work for you. This isn't love. It's a mistake." But Jacob wasn't so sure. He'd had countless women, yet none had made him feel the way Monica did. He wanted to tell her to stay, to forget the rules of class and reputation. But pride held him back. For Monica, it wasn't pride, it was fear. Fear of being used, discarded, or destroyed. She knew what people like Jacob's circle thought of women like her. She wasn't a trophy wife or a model, she was the help. That morning she left his room before anyone else could see. Jacob watched her walk away, torn between desire and denial. But the night couldn't be erased. Weeks passed. Monica avoided him as much as she could, but Jacob found excuses to be near her. He was caught between two worlds, the billionaire who had everything and the man who wanted something money couldn't buy. And then, one morning, Monica's world shifted. She stared at the pregnancy test in her small bathroom, her hands trembling. Positive. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the weight of reality crushed her. She carried the child of a man who would never stand beside her. She was alone. When she told Jacob, his face turned to stone. His pride spoke louder than his heart. "Monica, do you have any idea what this would do to me? To my name? To my company?" Her voice broke. "What about me, Jacob? What about the child?" He looked away, anger masking his fear. "There is no child, not mine. I'll pay for whatever needs to be done. But don't expect me to ruin everything for a mistake." The words cut deep. That night, Monica packed her things and walked out of the Whitford mansion. She carried nothing but her dignity and the life growing inside her. And for the first time in his life, Jacob Whitford felt the sting of losing something he didn't even understand yet. The Whitford mansion faded into Monica's past the night she walked out. Gone were the marble floors and the grand chandeliers. Now her world was a one-bedroom apartment in a rundown Dallas neighborhood, with peeling paint on the walls and a leaky faucet that never stopped dripping. Her mother tried to help, but bills piled higher than paychecks. Monica worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by day and waiting tables by night. Her swollen belly made every shift harder, yet she refused to give up. Whispers followed her everywhere. The neighbors wondered who the father was. Some assumed it was a local boy who ran off. Others sneered.
I trusted you with this, and this is how you repay me. How could you be so careless?
I am so sorry, sir. I did not mean to.
Another single mother raising a child alone. Monica ignored them. She had no time for gossip. Her focus was survival. Late at night, she would collapse on her bed, holding her stomach. She whispered to the life inside her, "I don't know how, but I'll give you everything I never had. You won't grow up invisible like me." Her younger brother, Marcus, sometimes caught her crying quietly at the kitchen table. "Why don't you tell me who he is?" he asked once, his voice filled with frustration. "Because it doesn't matter," Monica replied firmly. "He's not here. I am. That's all that counts." But deep down, the truth burned. She remembered Jacob's face when he denied her, the coldness in his voice when he called their child a mistake. She carried that wound like a scar. Every day was a fight. Rent overdue notices slipped under her door, her shoes worn thin, meals stretched thin to last the week. Yet with every hardship, her resolve grew stronger. By the time her due date neared, Monica had transformed from the quiet maid into a woman hardened by survival. She no longer thought of Jacob Whitford as a billionaire who once touched her life. To her, he was gone, erased. But fate had already written his presence into her future. The night Caleb was born, rain pounded against the hospital windows. Monica clutched her mother's hand, sweat pouring down her face as the doctor urged her to push. Hours of pain gave way to a single cry, a baby's cry that pierced the air like a miracle. When the nurse laid him in her arms, Monica's tears flowed freely. He was tiny, fragile, yet perfect. She studied every feature, his soft brown skin, the shape of his nose, his tiny fists curling in the blanket. And then she saw them. His eyes. They were gray. Not the dull gray of cloudy skies, but a sharp, storm gray, rare, striking, and unmistakable. The same eyes Jacob Whitford carried. Monica froze, her breath catching in her throat. She had hoped Caleb might look like her, that his connection to Jacob could remain hidden. But fate had other plans. Every time Caleb blinked, those eyes reminded her of the man who had rejected them. Her mother noticed too. "Whose eyes are those?" she whispered. Monica turned away, clutching her son closer. "They're his now. That's all that matters." In the weeks that followed, Monica adjusted to motherhood. Nights blurred into mornings and exhaustion weighed on her body. Caleb cried endlessly, needing warmth, milk, comfort. Yet even in her exhaustion, Monica never faltered. Sometimes, when Caleb's gray eyes locked onto hers, Monica felt a rush of conflicting emotions: love, fear, resentment, and pride. She would kiss his forehead and whisper, "You're mine. No one can take you away." Life outside the hospital walls, however, didn't get easier. Bills piled higher, her landlord grew impatient, and the city seemed colder than ever. People in her neighborhood noticed Caleb's unusual eye color and asked questions Monica refused to answer. But no matter the struggle, Monica clung to her promise. She worked, she sacrificed, and she endured. What she didn't know was that across the city, Jacob was thriving. Business was booming, and his face appeared in magazines and newspapers, yet every time he caught his reflection, something gnawed at him. He thought of Monica less often, but in quiet moments he wondered if she had taken his money and disappeared. He never imagined that a child with his exact eyes now existed, living in a cramped apartment, waiting for fate to one day bring them face to face. For now, Caleb was just a baby, innocent, unaware of the storm his very existence would one day unleash. The summer night in Willow Creek was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried secrets. Emma sat on her porch steps, knees pulled close to her chest, listening to the distant hum of crickets. Her heart was heavy with a mix of longing and doubt. Every time she thought of Noah, she felt both safe and terrified, safe in his arms, terrified of what her parents would say if they ever found out. She traced her fingers along the wooden railing, worn smooth by years of storms and summers. That's when she heard the faint crunch of footsteps on the gravel road. Her chest tightened, but before she could stand, Noah's familiar silhouette appeared at the edge of the porch light. "You're awake," he said softly, almost whispering, like he was afraid to disturb the peace of the night. Emma managed a small smile. "I couldn't sleep." He climbed the steps, his presence filling the space like warm sunlight cutting through morning fog. For a moment, they just sat there side by side, saying nothing. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, charged with all the words neither of them knew how to say yet. Finally, Noah broke it. "Emma, do you ever feel like this town is too small? Like the walls are closing in?" Her breath caught. He had put into words what she had never dared to admit. "All the time," she whispered back. "Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating here." He turned to her then, his eyes steady and searching. "I don't know what the future looks like. I don't even know if we're supposed to have one. But when I'm with you—" He hesitated, his voice trembling. "When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe again." Emma's heart pounded so loud she was sure he could hear it. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, but fear coiled around her throat. If her parents found out, if the town started talking, her whole world could collapse. Just then, the porch light from inside flicked on. Emma froze. Through the screen door, her mother's shadow passed by the hallway. Noah quickly leaned back into the darkness, his jaw tight. "Go," Emma whispered urgently. "If they see you." But Noah didn't move. He touched her hand gently, his thumb brushing her knuckles like a promise. "I'm not afraid of them, Emma. I'm only afraid of losing you." The words cut through her defenses, leaving her shaken. She pulled her hand back not because she wanted to, but because she knew how dangerous it was. "Please, Noah," she begged softly. "Not tonight." His eyes lingered on hers for one aching heartbeat longer. Then, with a heavy sigh, he stepped off the porch and disappeared into the night, leaving Emma trembling between fear and longing. Inside, her mother's shadow moved on. But Emma knew it was only a matter of time before the whispers at midnight became storms in the daylight. By the next week, Willow Creek was buzzing with whispers. The town had always been small, the kind where everyone knew when you bought a new couch or when your cousin visited from out of state. But now, the whispers weren't about couches or cousins. They were about Emma. It started at the diner. Emma was carrying plates to a table when she caught two women leaning across their coffee cups, voices hushed but sharp. "Did you see her the other night?" one asked. "With him?" the other replied, her brows rising. "Lord help that girl, she's going to ruin herself." Emma pretended not to hear, but her hands trembled as she set the plates down. When she returned to the kitchen, her friend Macy gave her a worried look. "Emma, you gotta be careful. Macy said under her breath. People are watching. Emma forced a smile. They've got nothing better to do. But deep down, fear gnawed at her. The truth was, they had seen something. Noah slipping onto her porch after midnight, the shadow of two figures sitting too close in the dark. In a town like Willow Creek, that was all it took. Meanwhile, Noah felt the shift too. When he walked into the hardware store, conversation stopped. When he passed by the churchyard, eyes followed him with suspicion. He wasn't just the boy from the other side of town anymore. He was the boy people said Emma shouldn't be near. That Friday evening, Emma and Noah met by the old creek, their secret place away from judging eyes. Emma tossed a pebble into the water, her face pale. "They're talking about us," she whispered. "I know," Noah replied. His jaw was clenched, his fists shoved deep into his pockets. "Let them talk. They don't get to decide what we are." Her eyes filled with tears. "Noah, you don't understand. My parents, if they believe any of this, they'll lock me in the house. They'll do everything to keep me away from you." He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "Emma, do you want me to stop coming around?" The question sliced through her. She shook her head quickly. "No. God, no." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her palm to his chest. "I just don't know how long we can keep this up before everything explodes." For a moment, the only sound was the water rushing over stones. Then Noah lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Emma, I'd rather face every lie, every whisper, every stare, than live a single day pretending you don't mean everything to me." Her lips parted, her heart torn between terror and hope. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to live in that truth. But as the sound of distant laughter carried over the creek, voices from town kids heading their way, Emma quickly pulled her hand back. "We can't be seen," she warned. "Not now." Noah nodded, but the fire in his eyes didn't fade. The world might have started talking, but he wasn't planning on letting their story be written by anyone else. Emma knew something was wrong the moment she stepped through the front door. Her father was sitting stiffly in his recliner, the newspaper untouched in his lap. Her mother was at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly as though she'd been praying. The silence in the house was heavy, too heavy. "Emma," her father said, his voice low, controlled in a way that made her stomach twist. "Sit down." Her throat went dry. She glanced toward the stairs, thinking of retreating to her room, but her mother's sharp voice cut through the thought. "Now, Emma." She lowered herself onto the couch, her hands folded in her lap, her heart thundering. Her father leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "We've been hearing things I don't want to believe. But this town has eyes and they don't lie. Folks are saying you've been spending time with that boy, Noah Carter." Emma's pulse spiked. She forced herself to keep her voice calm. "He's just a friend." Her mother's face tightened. "A friend doesn't sneak onto porches at midnight. A friend doesn't make a young woman the subject of gossip in church pews." Emma looked down at her hands, heat rising in her cheeks. "People will talk about anything. They don't know me, they don't know him." Her father's voice hardened. "I don't care what excuses you make. That boy is trouble. His father's been in and out of jail, his family's name stained with scandal. And now people think you are following in their footsteps." Something inside Emma snapped. She lifted her head, her voice shaking but strong. "Noah is nothing like his father. He's kind. He listens. He treats me with respect, more than half the boys in this town ever did." Her mother gasped, as if Emma had cursed in church. "You don't know what you're saying. You're blinded. He'll ruin your future before it even starts." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but they burned more from anger than sadness. "My future is mine to ruin," she said. The room went silent. Her father's jaw tightened, his fists curling against his knees. For a moment, Emma thought he might strike the table in rage, but instead he leaned back, his voice low and dangerous. "If I hear one more word about you and that boy, Emma, one more rumor, one more late-night shadow, I will make sure you never see him again. Do you understand?" Her chest heaved as she swallowed her tears. She wanted to scream that they didn't understand, that Noah wasn't what they thought. But the look in her father's eyes froze her tongue. "Yes, sir," she whispered, though the words tasted like betrayal. She rose quietly and slipped into her room, shutting the door behind her. But the moment she leaned against it, the tears came, hot and heavy. Outside, through her window, she could see the distant glow of the town lights. Somewhere in that glow was Noah, waiting, hoping. And Emma knew, no matter what her parents said, she wasn't ready to let him go. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her father's warning echoing in her head. "One more rumor, and I'll make sure you never see him again." But her heart wouldn't listen. It beat louder with each passing minute, as if urging her to move, to run, to find Noah before the distance her parents demanded became a prison she couldn't endure. At midnight, Emma slid out of bed. The wooden floor creaked under her feet and she froze, listening. Her father's steady snore carried down the hall, her mother's softer breaths beside him. Slowly, carefully, she slipped her shoes on and lifted the window frame inch by inch. The cool night air rushed in, carrying the sound of crickets and the faint hum of the town. With a deep breath, she swung one leg out, then the other, lowering herself to the grass below. Her heart pounded like a drum as she tiptoed across the yard, avoiding the patches of gravel that would crunch beneath her feet. By the time she reached the edge of the road, freedom filled her chest like fire. She broke into a run, the gravel road stretching before her, the moonlight guiding her way. Noah was waiting at the old barn just as they'd planned. He was leaning against the wooden doorframe, his shadow tall and lean in the moonlight. When he saw her, his eyes lit up, relief washing over his face. "You came," he said, stepping forward. "I had to," Emma whispered, breathless. "I couldn't let them scare me away." He reached for her hand, pulling her close. For a moment, the rest of the world faded. The warnings, the whispers, the fear. It was just them, standing together against everything. But as Noah pressed his forehead to hers, his voice softened. "Emma, I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. Your family, your future. They'll never forgive you for being here." She pulled back, her eyes burning with stubborn fire. "Noah, don't you get it? You're not the reason I'd lose everything. You're the reason I have something worth holding on to." His chest rose and fell as he stared at her, torn between hope and fear. Then, unable to resist, he kissed her, soft at first, then desperate, like he was sealing a promise neither of them fully understood yet. When they finally broke apart, Emma's lips trembled. "We'll have to be careful," she whispered, "but I'd rather take this risk than live like a ghost in my own house." Noah nodded, determination sparking in his eyes. "Then we fight. Together." The words filled Emma with courage she hadn't known she possessed. She clung to him in the barn shadows, unaware that beyond the fields, a pair of watchful eyes had already seen her leave the house. And by morning, the whispers in Willow Creek would grow louder than ever. Emma thought she had slipped back into her room unnoticed. She had crept through the window just before dawn, her shoes muddy, her dress smelling faintly of Noah's cologne. She lay in bed pretending to sleep, her heart still racing with the memory of his kiss. But in small towns like Willow Creek, secrets never stayed buried for long. By mid-morning, her father stood at the breakfast table, face red, fists clenched around the morning paper. Emma's stomach dropped as she entered the kitchen. Her mother's eyes were cold, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Where were you last night?" her father asked, his voice too calm, the kind of calm that came before a storm. Emma froze. I was in my room." "Don't lie to me, Emma." His voice thundered now. Mrs. Dorsey saw you sneaking out past midnight. She saw you running toward the fields, and she saw who you were meeting. Her throat tightened. The room seemed to shrink around her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her father slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. That boy will ruin you. Do you want to throw away everything, your reputation, your future, just to be seen with him? Emma's mother finally spoke, her tone sharp as glass. Do you know what people are saying about you already? About us? You're bringing shame to this family, Emma. The sting of her words cut deeper than she expected. Shame. That was always the weapon of Willow Creek. The whispers, the judgment, the endless watching eyes. Tears threatened, but Emma stood taller, her voice shaking. Noah isn't what you think he is. He's kind. He cares about me. He's more honest than half the people in this town pretending to be saints. Her father's face darkened. Enough, he roared. I forbid you from ever seeing him again. If you disobey me, you're no daughter of mine. The silence that followed was suffocating. Emma's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. For a moment she thought about giving in, about nodding and keeping the peace. But then she remembered Noah's words from the barn. We fight. Together. Her voice came out small but firm. I can't stop seeing him, I won't. Her father's chair screeched against the floor as he stood, towering over her. Then you leave me no choice. From now on you are grounded. No school, no phone, no friends. You will not step outside this house unless I say so. Do you understand? Emma's mother avoided her eyes, silently agreeing with every word. Emma clenched her fists at her sides, tears finally spilling. You can lock me in this house, but you can't stop me from loving him. Her father turned away, muttering under his breath. That love will destroy you. Emma ran upstairs, slamming her bedroom door. She pressed her face into her pillow, heart breaking but spirit unbroken. If her family thought locking her away would end this, they didn't know her at all. And outside, somewhere in town, Noah was already hearing the whispers too. The first time Noah noticed the change, it was subtle. A farmer at the market stall pulled his produce back as Noah reached for an apple. Another man muttered under his breath, "Stay away from our girls." By afternoon, the whispers had turned into stares, cold, heavy, unblinking. Willow Creek was small, and word traveled faster than the wind. By now, everyone knew about Emma sneaking out to meet him. Noah kept his head high, but each glance burned into him. He had fought many battles in his life, against hunger, against poverty, against the ache of being fatherless. But this was different. This was the battle of perception, and in Willow Creek, perception was everything. At the diner, where he sometimes picked up shifts, the owner's wife cornered him. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but leave that Whitford girl alone. You're dragging her down with you. Noah swallowed his anger. He wanted to shout, I'm not dragging her down, I'm trying to lift her up. But he stayed silent, knowing anything he said would only make the gossip worse. Later that night, as he walked home, he found his younger sister, Maya, waiting on the porch. She was just 16, sharp-eyed and fierce, the only family he had left. Her arms were crossed tight against her chest. You need to stop seeing her, Noah, she said flatly. People are talking. It's bad enough they look at us like we don't belong here. Now they're saying you're chasing trouble. Noah sat down on the steps, exhaustion weighing him down. Maya, she's not like the rest. She doesn't care about the whispers. She sees me for who I am. Maya's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice stayed hard. And what if it cost you everything? What if it cost us everything? The word us cut deep. He had promised his late mother he would protect Maya, keep her safe from the cruelty of the world. But how could he do that if the entire town turned against them? Before he could answer, the crunch of gravel drew his attention. 3 boys from town, sons of wealthy families, stood at the edge of the yard. Their laughter was cruel, their intentions clear. Hey, farm boy, one of them called out. How much did the Whitford girl cost you? Or did you just steal her like everything else? Noah stood, fists tightening at his sides. He could take a beating, but not in front of his sister. "Go home," he said, voice low and steady. The tallest boy stepped closer, smirking. "Or what? You'll fight us? You'll end up in jail before you take her to the dance." Maya stepped between them, her voice sharp. "Leave us alone." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the boys laughed again and turned away, tossing insults over their shoulders as they disappeared into the dark. Noah sat back down, breathing hard, his knuckles white. Maya touched his arm gently. "They won't stop, Noah. This is only the beginning." He looked up at the night sky, the weight of the town pressing down on him. He had nothing to offer Emma but his heart, and now even that was being twisted into something dirty in the eyes of Willow Creek. But deep inside, he made a silent promise. "They can strip me of my pride, my peace, even my safety. But they will never strip me of her." The walls of the Whitford home felt tighter with each passing day. Emma's father had kept his word. No school, no phone, no contact with the outside world. Even her mother had confiscated her sketchbook, as if drawing would give her strength to rebel. The silence was torture. Every night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Noah's words in her mind. "We fight. Together." But she wasn't fighting. She was trapped. The thought of Noah facing the town's cruelty alone made her chest ache. By the end of the week, her spirit snapped. At dinner, her father lectured about propriety and respectability, while Emma pushed peas around her plate. She nodded when spoken to, but her mind was already plotting. The plan was dangerous, reckless even, but she would not let them keep her prisoner forever. That night, when the house grew quiet, she slipped out of bed. The moonlight painted silver lines across her floor as she pulled on her boots and grabbed her coat. She tiptoed past her parents' room, her heart thundering in her chest, then crept down the stairs. The front door creaked when she opened it, and for a moment she froze, convinced her father would appear with his thunderous voice. But the house stayed silent. She stepped into the cool night air, her breath clouding in the darkness. The streets of Willow Creek were hushed, save for the distant bark of a dog. Emma moved quickly, her pulse racing with each step toward the fields. Every shadow looked like a threat, every rustle like a warning. But she pressed on. At the edge of the woods, she stopped and whispered, "Please be there, Noah." And he was. Noah stepped out from behind the trees, his figure outlined by moonlight. His eyes widened when he saw her, then softened with relief. "Emma." Before he could say more, she threw herself into his arms. His coat smelled of earth and smoke, grounding her in a way nothing else could. "I couldn't stay away," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "They can lock me in that house, but they can't keep me from you." Noah held her tighter, his voice trembling with both anger and tenderness. "They're tearing us apart, Emma. The whole town's against us. But if you're here, it means we still have a chance." She pulled back just enough to look into his storm-gray eyes. "I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. I'd rather face the world with you than live safely without you." Noah kissed her then, not a kiss of stolen passion, but of defiance. It was a vow, a promise that no father, no gossip, no town could erase. But as they clung to each other in the shadows, neither of them saw the figure watching from a distance, hidden among the trees. Someone had followed Emma, and their secret was no longer safe. Emma and Noah clung to each other, the night air wrapping around them like a fragile blanket. For a few precious minutes, the world melted away, but the crunch of twigs in the distance shattered their peace. Noah pulled back, alert. "Did you hear that?" Emma's breath caught. She turned, scanning the shadows between the trees. At first she saw nothing, but then a flicker of movement, the unmistakable silhouette of a man retreating deeper into the woods. Her stomach dropped. "Someone's there." Noah's instincts flared. He stepped forward, shielding Emma with his body. "Who's out there?" he called, his voice steady, defiant. Silence. Then a low chuckle cut through the darkness. "So it's true," the voice sneered. "The Whitford princess sneaking around with the farm boy." The figure stepped into the moonlight, and Emma's heart sank. It was Travis Miller, the mayor's son, one of the same boys who had harassed Noah days earlier. His smirk was cruel, his eyes glinting with triumph. Emma's voice cracked. "Travis, please, don't." He folded his arms, savoring the power. "Don't what? Don't tell your daddy? Don't tell the whole town that their precious Emma Whitford's been rolling around in the dirt with him?" He jabbed a finger toward Noah. "You think anyone's going to believe this is love? They'll call it what it is. Shame." Noah's fists tightened, but Emma grabbed his arm before he could step forward. She could feel the fury trembling through him. "Go ahead," Noah said through clenched teeth. "Run your mouth, but you know nothing about us." Travis laughed, slow and mocking. "I don't have to know anything. All I need is one word in the right ear, and by sunrise, half of Willow Creek will be talking. By noon, the other half will. Your daddy will make sure you never see her again, and you, farm boy, you'll be run out of town." Emma's throat tightened. Panic swirled in her chest. "Travis, why are you doing this? What do you want?" He stepped closer, his smirk fading into something colder. "What I've always wanted. To watch him fail." His eyes flicked to Noah. "You don't belong here, and I'll make sure everyone remembers it." Noah took a step forward, his voice low. "Stay away from her. If you lay a hand on Emma, you'll regret it." Travis's grin returned. "I don't have to touch her. I just have to talk." He backed away, his laughter echoing through the trees. "Sweet dreams, lovebirds. Tomorrow's going to be fun." When he was gone, Emma collapsed against Noah, shaking. "He's going to ruin everything," she whispered. Noah held her tight, though his own chest burned with rage. "Let him talk. They were always going to hate me. But Emma, you have to be ready. This storm is coming and it won't be kind." Her tears soaked into his coat as she whispered, "I don't care what it costs. I won't let them take you from me." But deep inside, Emma knew Travis's threat was real. By tomorrow, their fragile secret wouldn't belong to them anymore. It would belong to the town. The hospital room was quiet except for the faint beeping of the monitor. Angela cradled the baby in her arms, exhaustion and joy mixing on her tear-streaked face. The delivery had been long and difficult, but the moment she heard her son's cry, her entire world shifted. For a few minutes, nothing else mattered. Not the lies, not the rejection, not the humiliation, just the fragile little life in her arms. But reality soon came crashing back. The nurse entered with a clipboard, politely asking if Angela wanted the birth certificate filled. Angela nodded, but her heart clenched. She knew what came next. Questions about the father. She froze, unable to write his name. A billionaire who had turned his back on her. A man who had once whispered promises in the dark, only to discard her when life grew complicated. Her hand trembled. She left the space blank. Later that night, however, Angela's sister Celeste came by with food and encouragement. When she saw the blank certificate, she frowned. "Angela, you can't hide this forever. He deserves to know." Angela's chest tightened. "He already knows, and he rejected us. Why should I give him the privilege of his name on this paper?" Celeste sat beside her. "Because this isn't about him anymore. It's about your child's future. Whether you like it or not, the truth will follow you." Angela looked down at her son. His little features were so delicate, but something about his eyes unsettled her. They carried a faint resemblance she couldn't deny. For the first time, she whispered, "What if I'm wrong? What if I don't even know the full truth myself?" The next day, while she was still recovering, an unexpected knock came at the hospital door. It was Richard. Angela's entire body went cold. She wanted to scream at him to leave, but her voice caught in her throat. He looked haggard, Nothing like the polished man she once worked for. His eyes darted to the baby, then back to her. "Angela, we need to talk." She turned her head away. "Now you want to talk? After months of silence?" Richard's jaw tightened. "I came because I couldn't shake the thought. That child, he looks like..." His words faltered. Angela cut in sharply. "Don't say it. You don't get to claim him now." But Richard wasn't there just to argue. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. "I had a DNA test ordered. I need you to let the hospital run it officially. If I'm wrong, I'll disappear forever. But if I'm right..." He looked at her with a rare vulnerability. "Then everything changes." Angela's stomach dropped. A DNA test. The final proof. The one thing she had avoided because deep down she feared the answer. Her heart raced as she looked at the baby, then back at Richard. What if the results tied her forever to the man who had abandoned her? What if the baby's life was about to be rewritten in ways she couldn't control? The tension in the room was suffocating. Angela whispered, "Fine. Do it. But when the truth comes out, don't think for a second I'll forgive what you put me through." Richard nodded, his face unreadable. For the first time, the battle was no longer between them. It was between the past they shared and the truth that was about to be revealed. The hospital corridor felt colder than usual as Angela sat waiting, her baby cradled against her chest. Every tick of the clock on the wall gnawed at her nerves. She hated that it had come to this, that her child's worth, her motherhood, and her future were all hanging on a sterile piece of paper. Richard paced back and forth across the room, his hands buried in his pockets. His usually steady demeanor cracked, revealing the unease beneath his polished exterior. For once, he wasn't in control. Finally, a doctor entered carrying a sealed envelope. Both Angela and Richard froze. "Here are the results," the doctor said, setting the envelope on the table between them. "This is confidential. I'll give you privacy." He stepped out, closing the door behind him. The room felt suffocatingly small. Angela stared at the envelope, her fingers itching but refusing to touch it. "You open it," she said flatly. Richard sat down slowly, almost as if the chair might collapse under the weight of what was about to be revealed. His hands trembled as he tore the seal. He unfolded the papers, his eyes scanning the words, then froze. Angela's heart pounded. "What does it say?" He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. His lips parted, but for a long moment, no sound came out. Then, in a voice both shaky and stunned, he whispered, "He's mine." Angela felt her chest tighten, tears welling up against her will. She wanted to be angry, wanted to scream at him for abandoning her when she needed him most, but in that moment, all she could think of was the truth she had both feared and longed for. Richard reached out instinctively as if to hold the baby, but Angela pulled back. "Don't," she snapped, her voice breaking. "You don't get to swoop in now and play the hero. You turned your back on us. You called me a liar." Richard's face contorted with regret. "I was wrong. God, Angela, I was a coward. I was scared of what people would say, scared of how it would ruin me. But seeing him now, knowing the truth, I can't run anymore." Angela shook her head, her tears falling freely. "Do you think this erases the months I spent alone? The nights I cried myself to sleep? The humiliation I endured while you lived in luxury?" Her voice rose, trembling with fury and pain. "You don't deserve him." Richard's eyes darkened. "You may hate me, Angela, but he is my son. Whether you like it or not, he has my blood, and I will fight for him if I have to." Angela's stomach turned cold. She had expected denial, maybe another round of insults, but this was worse. Richard wasn't rejecting the baby anymore. He was claiming him. The truth that should have brought relief only brought fear. The battle had shifted. No longer was it about Angela's survival. It was about the custody of her child. And deep down, Angela knew. Richard had the money, the lawyers, and the influence to make her life a nightmare. Angela barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's face, haunted yet determined, when he'd said, "I will fight for him if I have to." The next morning, a knock at her apartment door sent a chill down her spine. She opened it cautiously and her stomach sank. A man in a sharp suit stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Angela Brooks?" he asked formally. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He handed her the envelope. "You've been served." Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside were legal documents stamped with Richard's name. He was filing for partial custody of Caleb. Angela staggered back, dropping into the chair beside the kitchen table. Caleb's soft coo from his crib in the corner only made her chest ache more. How could the man who once denied him now try to take him away? She skimmed the papers, her eyes blurring with tears. Richard's lawyers had framed her as unfit, a struggling maid in a rundown apartment with no financial stability. They painted her love and sacrifice as weakness, while glorifying Richard as a provider who could give the child every opportunity in life. Angela slammed the papers on the table. "He's trying to buy my baby." Her friend Carla, who had come over to help with groceries, shook her head angrily. "Girl, you can't let him do this. He's using his money to make you look small. But you're Caleb's mother. You've been there since day one. No court in their right mind would ignore that." Angela wasn't so sure. She knew how power worked in Richard's world. Money bent the truth. Influence rewrote reality. And in that courtroom, she feared her love wouldn't be enough. Later that evening, Richard called. She nearly ignored it, but something inside her demanded she hear him out. "Angela," his deep voice came through the line, softer now, almost pleading. "Don't see this as an attack. I need to be part of his life. He's my son." "Your son?" Angela snapped, anger flooding her. "Where was that claim when I was alone in the hospital? When I had to work double shifts to buy formula? You didn't want him then, Richard. You didn't want us." "I made mistakes," he admitted quietly. "But I'm trying to fix them." "Fix them?" Angela's voice broke. "You think dragging me to court is fixing it?" There was silence on the line, heavy and suffocating. Then Richard spoke, his tone turning hard again. "If you won't work with me, Angela, then I'll do what I have to. I won't walk away from him." Angela hung up, her heart racing. She pressed her forehead against Caleb's tiny hand as he slept, tears streaming down her face. "They won't take you from me. I swear it. No matter what it costs me, I'll fight." But deep down, a terrifying thought lingered. Richard wasn't bluffing, and the war for Caleb had only just begun. Angela's apartment felt like a battlefield. Papers littered the table, custody documents, pay stubs, even letters from neighbors willing to testify to her character. Carla sat across from her, scrolling furiously on her phone. "You're not fighting this alone," Carla said firmly. "If Richard wants a war, then fine. We'll hit him where he's weakest, his reputation." Angela frowned. "Carla, I don't want my son's life plastered all over the internet." Carla leaned forward. "Listen, people eat stories like this alive. Billionaire denies Maid's baby, then tries to take him after a DNA test? Girl, this isn't just your fight anymore. This is about power, class, and justice. The world needs to see the truth." Angela hesitated. She hated the thought of Caleb being caught in the storm of social media. But as she looked around her cramped apartment, the peeling paint, the second-hand crib, the unpaid bills stacked high, she realized Carla was right. In a courtroom where money talked louder than love, public sympathy might be her only weapon. That evening, Carla posted Angela's story anonymously on a popular forum. Within hours, it was everywhere. Headlines screamed across social media. "Billionaire tries to snatch son from struggling single mom." "DNA test forces mogul to claim child he once rejected." Hashtags trended. Influencers weighed in. Talk shows picked it up. By the next morning, Angela's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. When she turned on the TV, her jaw dropped. There was Richard, stepping out of a luxury car, cameras flashing around him. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Whitman, is it true you denied your son? Why are you suing for custody now? Is this about saving face or saving your child?" Richard's jaw tightened, but he kept walking, ignoring every word. The more he stayed silent, the louder the speculation grew. Angela sat on the couch, Caleb in her arms, watching the circus unfold. For once, the power didn't feel one-sided. The world was finally looking at Richard not as an untouchable billionaire, but as a flawed man cornered by his own actions. But victory felt uneasy. Because even as the headlines painted Richard as a villain, Angela knew him well enough to understand something crucial. He would not back down. That night, she received another call. Richard's voice was low, controlled but simmering with fury. "You've made this public?" he asked. "I didn't," Angela replied, her heart pounding. "But maybe people deserve to know the truth. You think the crowd will protect you?" His tone turned icy. "This isn't a game, Angela. The court doesn't run on hashtags. And if you think you can shame me into giving up, you're wrong." Angela tightened her hold on Caleb, her voice firm. "Maybe. But for the first time, you're not the only one with power." Richard went silent for a long beat. Then he hung up. Angela exhaled, her chest heaving. She didn't know what tomorrow's headlines would bring, or what tricks Richard's lawyers would pull. But one thing was certain: this fight was no longer private. It was a war being waged in the courts, in the media, and in their hearts. And the end was coming soon. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and old paper, like a place where destinies were weighed. Angela held Caleb in her arms, his small face tucked against her collarbone. The courtroom was packed: reporters, cameras, and people who wanted to see if a rich man could really be held to account. Richard Whitman sat at the plaintiff's table, immaculately dressed, an island of calm until the moment his name was called. His lawyers moved with practiced confidence, papers stacked like armor. Across from him, Angela's legal team had less money but more fury. Carla sat behind Angela, hands clenched, eyes bright with something like faith. The judge read the facts aloud: the DNA test, the months of neglect, the sudden claim for custody, the public uproar. He spoke slowly, as if the weight of each word mattered. "The court must decide in the best interest of the child," he said. "Not the convenience of adults, not the reputations at stake." Richard rose first. He spoke about resources, schools, doctors, opportunities, ways a child of privilege might have fewer obstacles. He painted a picture of control and certainty. When he finished, his voice was steady, but there was an edge of something else: the knowledge that wealth could buy many things, but not trust. Angela spoke next. Her voice trembled, but it was real. She told the judge about late nights, about saving every coupon and working every shift, about singing lullabies in a kitchen that had no heat. She spoke of love without fanfare, of changing diapers at midnight, of being the first face Caleb ever knew. "I am his mother," she said plainly. "That's not a resume item, it's a life." The lawyers exchanged looks. The reporters scribbled. The room felt like the hinge of a scale. Then the unexpected happened. A witness called by Angela stepped forward, an older woman who worked at the clinic where Caleb was born. She testified that Angela had refused payment for minor favors, that she had cared for neighbors' children without complaint, that she had been consistent in ways money cannot manufacture. Her voice was steady, small but true. Next came a twist no one had scripted. A private investigator for Richard's camp testified, reluctantly, that while Richard had the means, he'd been absent. He'd written emails expressing doubt, not decisiveness. He'd planned travel, not fatherhood. His testimony made an angle for the judge. Intention matters, and timing matters too. Outside, the roar of public opinion thrummed, but inside, the judge kept the law steady. He considered best interest, stability, and the bond that grows in quiet rooms and sleepless nights. He looked at Richard and then at Angela, and at the tiny child asleep against a mother's chest. "Mr. Whitman," he said finally, "you are the biological father. Biology cannot be ignored, but so cannot the bond between a child and the primary caregiver who raised him these first months." The judge's ruling landed like a final bell. Joint custody, with Angela granted primary physical custody and Richard granted supervised visitation to start, increasing as he demonstrated consistency and commitment. He ordered a parenting plan, mandatory counseling, and a review in 6 months. Richard's face did not crumple into defeat. He looked stunned, then oddly relieved, as if the ruling forced him into a shape he'd been avoiding. Angela's knees trembled. She leaned against the bench for a second, then pulled herself up, eyes wet but clear. Carla squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. Outside, the crowd erupted into mixed noise, some cheering, some sighing. Cameras flashed. Headlines formed in real time. The immediate war was over. The deeper fight had just begun. Richard had been forced to acknowledge his son. He had been forced into a plan that required action, not just money. For Angela, the victory was not total victory. There would be lawyers, visits, and the long gnawing of public attention. But she had kept Caleb. She had turned private pain into public truth and won the right to keep her life intact. As they walked out of the courthouse, Angela felt the weight of every hard night lift just enough to breathe. Richard trailed behind, an uneasy figure carrying the lesson that power without responsibility is hollow. Caleb squirmed, then yawned, oblivious to the headlines and the rulings. He had a mother who would fight for him, and a father who now had a choice, to show up. Angela looked down at him and whispered, "We made it this far. We'll keep going." For a moment, they were simply a mother and her son moving through sunlight. The rest, reconstruction, repair, accountability, would take time. Call to order, Top Core, your YouTube CTA discussion prompt. Thanks for watching this episode on Top Core. If this story moved you, do this now. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next real-life story about inequality and the choices people make. Like the video if you believe responsibility should follow power. Comment below. Who do you think paid the greater price, love or reputation? Share one life lesson you took from the story. I'll pin the most thoughtful response and read it in the next episode. Share this video. Tough conversations need to be public to change systems. Use the hashtag #TopCoreTruths so I can find your posts. If you want a follow-up episode, Courtroom Aftermath, Richard's attempts at redemption or Angela's life later, type "follow-up" in the comments and I'll prioritize it. Your engagement shapes the next chapter. Remember, this channel doesn't just chase clicks. We dig into how class, race, and power shape lives, and what we can learn when truth meets consequence. Stay with Top Core. We'll keep telling the stories that need to be heard.